What's Going on Seaville was made possible through donations and services provided by Women's Health Virginia, Lighthouse Studio, Hollywood Theater Lab,
Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Yeah. Carolyn, Merrick. You are a mother?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell me how or why you were inspired, how you were inspired to teach healthy sexuality education?
Yes, I am a mother of 3 boys. They're all teenagers now. And when they were younger at their elementary school here in town, in Charlottesville, they went through a program called Healthy Sexuality Education from grades, some of them from kindergarten on onward. And initially I was terrified that they would be learning any information that had to do with the word sexuality in it at that early age.
Scary word.
Yes, scary word, scary concept. I didn't know what to do. So, but I was educated along with them as to how to teach it and what to teach and when, and through seeing how wonderful it was for them to learn this information early on, I became an advocate myself, and eventually incorporated into health programs that I was doing at other schools. And now I'm back at that school teaching the subject myself.
So that's like the ultimate success story for their education program, inspiring you to go on and pay it forward. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Kiana.
Yes.
Kiana Mayfield. You are not a mother.
No.
But you are involved with many different levels of children, different age groups, different types of schools. Tell me a little bit about your experience with this education.
Yes, so I basically started following Carolyn at some of the schools she taught at, doing the healthy sexuality education, until I transitioned to do the exact same thing myself. And while we both teach similar material, we work with very different demographics, where Carolyn mostly focuses on elementary school children and middle school children. I work with all ages with an emphasis on teenagers and adults, or young adults.
Wonderful. So you take care of everybody.
Yeah.
Where both of you are concerned, you take care of all the age groups,
Yes.
right?
We do our best.
Yes.
So inquiring minds want to know, is your goal here to impose a value system or to judge parents on their moral choices? Or what are your goals for this sexuality education?
Well, absolutely not. We're not here to impose any moral standards. We subscribe to no particular religion or mindset. The only values that we want to incorporate into this information are the 3 values that we call the 3 R's. There's actually a really good website of an organization called Advocates for Youth, and that is the cornerstone of their program, which is designed to help people get healthy sexuality, age-appropriate, accurate information when they need it. And they are called the 3 R's, that of rights, respect, and responsibility. And those are values I think we all can agree on.
I think we would definitely recommend healthy sexuality classes for children starting as early as possible.
I would recommend this education not only for children but for parents too, because even as much as you think you know as a parent, you read the books, you get the letters saying, this is what I talked to your children about today. The kids had questions about this and this and this, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought to bring that up with my child, but somebody in the class brought it up, so maybe my child has the same question, and we should talk about that.
When the kids bring up things that they've learned in class, it's very comfortable, it's very easy, the language that we use. I know that they have this basis from the lessons that I learn about from the healthy sexuality classes.
It's something that I agree with what she's doing, and I think that education about all of those tricky things should start early and safe and simple. As situations get more complicated and children are exposed to a little bit more mature ideas, then you have a scaffolding in place to address those rather than just, hey, let's just wait until there's a major issue and then we'll address it after the fact.
We're lucky enough to have this program since they were young has opened the door for them to continue to have conversations with us, to have conversations with the appropriate teachers at school.
So the value of rights, every child, every person has the right to get accurate, age-appropriate information about sexuality education. Respect every person, including young children.
Yep.
have the right to be respected, their bodies to be respected, and they also need to learn how to respect themselves and other people. So, and then we as adults, caring adults, parents, have the responsibility to impart that information to young people so that they can make healthy choices and be safe and be happy and be healthy in their lives.
It's about making sure parents have the correct information to share with their children at the right ages so that they're comfortable talking about things later on in life. This is about the building blocks, building a foundation so that later in life you have those communication skills already built in.
Baby steps, if you
Yes, yes.
Definitely. Definitely baby steps, right.
will. What are some of the obstacles you come across when you're talking to parents about the word sexuality?
There's so many. Well, first, sexuality, you break it down, and the first and only thing people hear is sex.
Yes.
And so you have to make parents especially understand that just because we're talking about sexuality education, we're not talking about sexual intercourse. Sexuality is so many more things than just sexual intercourse. It's a part of it, but there's a wide array of other topics that we talk about in relation to healthy sexuality.
Right, and certainly at this age we're talking about educating young children from really ages 2 to about 7. That talk about sex, they're not even really interested in that, and that's not where the focus is. And as we'll talk about later, the focus is very different. But it's all about who you are as a person, what you like, your gender, what else?
What you don't like.
What you don't like.
You need to know the name of your body parts, what you have, what others have, because kids are curious, and you want to feed this curiosity in a healthy way while building this open communication so that they feel comfortable coming and talking to you about things that might be awkward or might be embarrassing later in life.
Yeah.
And by educating them early, that awkwardness disappears.
It goes away.
It goes away.
There's no reason to be awkward because you've already been having these conversations, or you can deal with all the awkwardness up front. So when you get to heavier topics of bullying, of other things, it's not as awkward.
So do you feel that when there's awkwardness involved, that sometimes it's coming from the parents maybe more than the children?
Absolutely. I can speak to that personally. Like I said, my initial reaction when I got this letter from the school about what the program was going to be offered at their school, I just kind of had this very fear-based response. That, I didn't have any education as a child growing up that was structured, certainly not at that time. I couldn't remember having questions at that age about my body. But now, interestingly, that I've come to be teaching it, I realize I did have questions. I just knew that they were not to be asked.
You couldn't ask anyone.
Right, because and it's been an interesting unwinding of my education, teaching this, to find out that really was, I was curious, I didn't feel like I was allowed to be curious.
You weren't encouraged to be curious.
Right.
In that realm anyway.
Right, and then that shut down some of the feelings I had about my body as being great and special. It felt more like parts I can't talk about, things I'm not supposed to share. So there was an embarrassment that came with the subject that it took me a long time, less so for Kiana because your parents were
my parents were really open about sexuality.
So you had two completely different experiences.
So it was always, you could ask them anything, you could talk about anything. There was no barriers to our communication about anything. So it was very strange to come into doing sexuality education and see how different most households are around this subject.
Right.
When I was growing up, I had a very forward-thinking mother. So I grew up with somebody who talked to me from a very early age about all kinds of issues about, my body, my sexuality, sex in general. All my friends would always come over to my house for sleepovers because everyone wanted to talk to my mom, So I'm grateful that my daughters had the next level of that, which was education like that in the school.
When I look back on my sexuality education as a child, I don't think I had classes in school until middle school or high school even, and my conversations with my parents were very awkward and uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the great things about the healthy sexuality education my kids have had, is they just feel really comfortable speaking about it.
My first introduction was probably my older brother's Playboy magazine stash in their bathroom. It was a huge pile. And I also had some health education, they called it, in high school, which was taught by the football coach, this grizzly older man who was talking about like pads and menstruation, and my girlfriends and I could hardly even look at him. It was so odd. And then, you know, what we learned from friends, and not a lot of conversations really with my parents so much.
My first experience with healthy sexuality education was in middle school, in 7th and 8th grade, in a trailer during PE time with a really uncomfortable and sweaty PE teacher who didn't want to be there, and a bunch of middle school kids who didn't want to be there. And I had obviously learned a lot from my peers before that point, but that was my first official exposure to healthy sexuality.
Unfortunately, there are going to be a lot of people that probably have had that same experience growing up too. So whose responsibility is it to teach healthy sexuality? Is it school or is it home?
In a perfect world,
yes,
I would say it would be lovely if both taught, because there's distinct advantages to having it taught at schools and at home. But ultimately, I would say the responsibility really falls to the parents, that it's their job to begin sexuality education at home.
They should be the primary sexuality educator, because ideally, in an ideal world, they're with the child their entire life. And so you have that consistent adult figure that you can go to and feel comfortable with talking about this subject, which can be a lifesaver for many kids, especially once they hit puberty, they're going through teen years, and they have all these other social pressures. To have that consistent person in their lives to be able to talk to about anything is really, really important.
Not to mention that it's the person that loves you the most in the world, the person that you can most trust, right?
The one that you think isn't gonna, they're not gonna hurt you, they're not gonna judge you,
give you misinformation.
Exactly, they're the one who is gonna be there for you, open arms, wholeheartedly.
That makes sense. So this is a plea to the parents too to sort of get on board with this. I'm curious about what some of the unhealthy strategies parents take on when it comes to sexuality education with their children.
I think one is, my kids are never going to have sex.
Not until you're 30.
Oh dear.
I will lock them in the house.
Yes, right. Definitely.
So would that be considered just denial?
Yeah, sure. Denial and like ignoring the issue altogether normally go hand in hand.
Yeah. Okay. So if I don't see it, it's not happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just that head in the sand mentality, not wanting to look at it. It's really hard as a parent, I can speak personally, to look at your child and think someday they're going to be older. And I mean, it just, when you're looking at a little child, my mind would go there. It's like, oh, somebody's going to break his heart. Somebody's going to, you know, all those things they're going to have to learn, you know, tuck in the shower curtain when you turn the water on, you know, put some more protein in your lunch, and you know, date somebody who you know is going to care about you. All these things you're thinking of, and you look at this little one who's playing with their Tonka trucks or whatever, and it's hard to think, I need to start these conversations now.
It's also hard to be like, you need to know what your body parts are.
Right.
You're playing with your Tonka truck. We don't need to talk about, you have an elbow and a nose and nothing else.
Right.
Yeah, and a chin.
Yeah.
Why should we talk about it?
Right.
And sometimes one of the major stumbling blocks is one I experienced. I didn't know how to start. I didn't have any education. So there's that feeling, well, I made it okay, you know.
And that's very common. Look at me, I'm fine. But are we really?
Right.
You know, when it comes to self-consciousness. And
right. Could we be more fine?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
could you be better than fine?
Could I be excellent?
Yes.
Right.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it would be great.
Which leads me to my next question. So what are some of the issues that that young people have to deal with today with regards to, you know, sort of healthy sexuality, body image, and those types of things?
Kiana, you're younger than I am. What are some issues?
Well, if you're talking about the younger demographic, the 2 to 7, how many 2-year-old girls do you know that have a Barbie or play with Barbie? If Barbie was a real woman, she would not be able to walk because her body is so disproportionate. She would fall forward. My teens like to say she would snap in half because she can't support herself. So if you have young kids growing up from a very early age, girls and boys, and this is the ideal body type they're being exposed to, and then you have magazines and commercials and ads, airbrushing, Photoshop. You have 20-year-olds playing 16-year-olds in high school TV shows, like they are brought up to think and expect men and women to look a very particular way. So when they do hit 7 or 8 and their bodies are starting to change very slowly, and then they really get into puberty, nobody's body looks like that.
There are a lot of media messages out there. I don't have a TV and we don't have a lot of media exposure at my house, but I even noticed walking down the magazine aisle at CVS, my son will be like looking at these pictures of women and like, why are they dressed like this? And what is this magazine about? I try to talk about what we see in media, but I think I also try to distance that entrance into his life. I think it's changed a lot since I was younger, and it's something that, I don't know, it's a hard thing to talk about.
And I think that you've also been working, especially with Evelyn, on body image issues as well. Evelyn's a very attractive young lady, but we're also hyper aware of the fact that the media portrays women, and men too. Obviously, there's no unattractive people on television. It sort of gives you the impression that that's the standard, that's what you're expecting. You've been working hard to try to correct that with both of the kids.
Right. Yeah. To say.
And kind of pointing it out when you see it and say, okay,
yes. And now
do you think that's really what they look like, or do you think that they doctored that picture?
Right.
There's some Photoshop going on there.
As the parent of 2 daughters, this class was particularly important to me because of the effects of mass media, especially on girls. The messages that they're bombarded with from a very early age about their bodies and what their bodies should look like, what their skin should look like. And I think that really distorts people's feelings and girls' ideas about themselves and their bodies. And so this class is the perfect answer to that. It's a class where my 5-year-old is learning that her body is great just the way it is, and she happens to be Asian. And this is a class that's just, very accepting of all bodies and all types and all things. And that's what every female child needs to hear. It's what every child in general needs to hear, but especially female children who are targeted by such a strong lobby of marketing people who, need to sell their product by telling people that you're not exactly as good as you should or could be.
And then you have girls and boys. We have manorexia now, which was unheard of 10 years ago. Because people are trying to strive for this very specific body type. When you look at a magazine and you look at the model who's on the magazine, and in real life they don't look the same. So just body image alone is something that is included in the umbrella of sexuality, but can be backed away from because we don't want to talk about the media or talk about these ads that we're seeing because they're just there.
Well, they're not going to go away, so the kids have to be protected somehow.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I would say it's a very narrow piece of the whole sexuality pie that they're being exposed to, and not always accurate and often harmful.
Exactly.
So it's really important to broaden that, and now is the time, when they're young, to talk about all the aspects of who they are as a healthy person and how to maintain that health.
Exactly. Like how many 5-year-olds, they know what sexy means. Why do you know what sexy means? You're 5. But it's around them. They've been, it's permeating their lives.
Music videos.
Exactly.
Lyrics.
Exactly. So I think that some parents think that their children aren't aware of this. But when I teach my classes, I say, do you want to be the primary educator, or do you want the media to be their primary educator? Because they're going to get it from the media. And the media definitely isn't depicting a healthy body image or a healthy sexuality or healthy boundaries.
I'm curious, though, because I have witnessed children acting a certain way when their parents aren't around, and then as sweet as pie when the parents are around. And so the parents may not see their children with this knowledge or this particular behavior. What advice would you give parents about that if they're not actually seeing it, but it's existing?
Start talking early, because they've already learned that there are some things we don't talk about with the parent.
Yeah.
So we're going to act those out or talk about those with other people.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
That would be my first.
That makes perfect sense. That solves that problem right away.
Or, especially if you have one child who's very open in dialogue with their parents, and other kids in their class aren't very in dialogue with their parents, they want to fit in with their friends. And so that can have a very distinct effect on the way that they interact with different groups of people.
But the child that knows and has been educated could actually be a positive leader with their group of friends and lead them away from that sort of influence, right?
I see that time and time again in the students that I teach. There are 3 or 4 in each class whose parents have already talked about these things, and we have tremendously rich conversations, and they so want to share anything about, how wonderful the umbilical cord is, the many functions of the umbilical cord and all that, and they're just, I had one kid, he would just pop up and stand up. He didn't even realize he was standing up when he would share his information. He was so excited,
That's amazing.
And everybody was learning. It was so wonderful.
Well, the umbilical cord is a really cool thing.
It's very cool.
We can't live without it.
That's right. That's right.
Well, let's get to the meat of this, because you talk about the 4 B's, which I think is a wonderful way to piece it out over the age groups, right? Over the ages of 2 to 7. So we've got bonds, which refers to families, right? And we have body parts, and then boundaries, and then babies.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Let's talk about bonds.
So I would say the cornerstone, if you think of sexuality education as a table with 4 legs, that bonds, or those bonds you form with those you love, and typically that's the people you first are around, which would be your family. Those are really important to talk about for a lot of reasons. Yeah. One reason, you want them to know who they are, where they came from. There are a lot of different family types out there these days.
For sure.
Adopted, single parents, maybe one parent is incarcerated, divorced parents, remarried, gay parents. There's just a lot of different ways one can make a family.
Mixed race parents.
Mixed race parents, we could go on and on. It's really wonderful. And so here we have this opportunity to talk about all different kinds of families at a very early age. And what that does, each child can feel that they're included in what a family is. Each child knows that they belong, and that's huge. That's really huge.
You don't want to create an other by not talking about a specific family type or like ignoring a specific family type, because then the kids from that family might feel isolated.
So that's sort of exclusive, like that's excluding
we don't want to
from what's normal to you, correct?
Yeah, we don't want to create an other.
So you try to make all of these scenarios normal,
Exactly.
and with the bottom line being, and to quote you, that they all love each other.
That's right.
And that's what you have in common throughout the whole thing.
That's
Exactly.
right.
I think of the 4 B's, the one that's most important in our family, given that we're a family made by adoption, is bonds. And where there are not necessarily genetic bonds in my family, talking to my children about families are made up of people who love each other and who commit their lives to each other. And I committed to bringing you into my life, and it was the best thing I've ever done. And it's what I've always told them in the adoption vein, but to hear about it in this vein is just reinforcing of what I've always told them.
Because we come from a less traditional structure, Jivan, my son, is exposed to a lot of different things in class and different family styles, and because of Carolyn's program and what I try to incorporate into his mind and his ideas of family, it helps to shape what is okay. I think a lot of kids don't know that there's different family styles and lifestyles.
And you normalize diversity rather than, oh, you're weird, you're different than me. And that is, again, another huge thing that you can carry on throughout your life in every aspect of who you are. To create an environment, just think about it, where you're teaching your child how wonderfully exciting it is to have diversity. Think of all the problems that we have in the world that we wouldn't have as much of. Bullying, isolate. It's just, it's incredible. So I think it's really, really important that each child sees themselves. And as an anecdote, I have one girl in one class, she was adopted, and we did a book on adoption, and she just lit up. She was so excited to be included. And then all these stories about her birth, and all the other kids were really excited, and some were a little jealous that they didn't get all the toys when they, came into the family. So, it's really wonderful. It expands their world in a way that they'll remember through the rest of their lives.
Yeah, it's very true. It's really important to have, to include. I remember my own experience growing up with television, not seeing a lot of brown kids on the TV, so it's very important that these kids feel included in the whole scheme of things. That's wonderful. Well, let's move to body parts. So,
Okay.
but before we move to body parts, what age was it that you would start with the bonds? Is that 2? Is that where it would begin?
Anytime you're talking to a child, and
It could just be part of the conversation.
I think that it starts at infancy. Like when the child is brought into the world, you're obviously like caring for it and already showing it that you love it and that it can trust you, and you're building those bonds. And if you can start very early with pointing things out, then it becomes very natural to move the conversation forward.
Right, and then the next step would be body parts.
That's right.
Which you start at infancy too, or at least toddlers. You show them where their eyes are, their nose, their elbows.
But people don't include our anatomical, our private parts in that list of things.
Right. Or they use slang terms.
Or they use slang terms. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about that in terms of why we think that slang terms have been more popular. Because to me, it tends to seem a little more vulgar sometimes, the slang words, than the actual anatomical
I think
words.
a lot of parents are just uncomfortable themselves with saying the real words, the scientific terms. It makes them very uncomfortable. And then to have to share that discomfort with your child, it's much better or much more comfortable for them to use a cutesy or, I don't know, like a fruity, frou-frou,
A made-up
non-exact word.
Right.
Because then you're not really talking about it. It's like a mask that comes up.
A mask, yes.
But again, if you think about what you're teaching, because we're always teaching whether we are conscious of it or not, what you're teaching is these are the parts that must not be named. Sort of.
So immediately they're bad, and so you feel uncomfortable.
A lot of times kids can have that reaction. I wouldn't say every child does, but I would say a lot of them
But
do.
you teach them for curse words, not to say curse words because they're bad words. If they hear at school, for instance, the correct terminology for their private parts, and they come home and say it, and you're like, no, we call that a such and so, then there is the same mechanism that is a bad word, that is a shameful or bad, embarrassing part of their body that they shouldn't talk about.
So we just said earlier, you don't want to create an us-them mentality. You're sort of creating an us-them, an other within
With
the
your
person.
own person.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, these aren't things I consciously as a parent thought of, but when they were brought to my attention, I went, oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. So it made me really be more aware, okay, this may be uncomfortable for me, and I may need to stand in front of a mirror and say this word 20 times before I can calmly say it to my child.
But you did, and it became a part of your vocabulary.
That's right. Now all the time in
can do it.
classes, and I see with this age group in particular how wonderful it is, because it's just, okay, this is how it is. You don't have to undo any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So
With
it's
the
just a
stigma
great
that's been
time
associated
to
with it.
share about it. Yeah.
And it might help us for so many other ways as well, just for like boys becoming men, respecting women, and respecting women's
Absolutely.
bodies, and women respecting their own
Absolutely.
bodies.
Sure.
If I don't know the names for my body parts, how can I respect myself?
Right.
Like, how can I want to protect myself, or how can I have healthy boundaries if I don't even know what things are called?
Right.
How, when I'm a teenager, can I go to a doctor and adequately describe what's going on with my body if I'm not in touch with my body at all?
Or what if my parents, I get the vibe, I can't talk to them about it, so I go to the Google parent
Yeah.
and look up words that aren't medically accurate, and what do I pull up there? And so what am I learning about sexuality?
Exactly.
And that should be scary enough for the parents to want to
think so.
run to the aid of their children and say, okay, this is your chin. You know.
But you know what? Oh, some parents, it just makes them run to the aid of parental controls on their
Right.
computer. But you know what? Your children have access to technology everywhere.
You can't stop it.
Exactly.
You can't stop it.
You might as well talk about it.
Is there a good book that you can
Absolutely.
suggest for that?
Yes. There's one called, it's Todd Parr's book, The Family Book. It's very
The
sweet.
Family Book.
The Family Book. So that types in all kinds of family types. With regard to body parts, there are some really good books. There's some good websites too. But the books that I like, one's called My Body is Private. Great book. Your Body Belongs to You is another really good book. Great, they're meant for children this age. Great illustrations. I've read them in classes. And the good news is, you read them, we have great conversations afterwards, and nobody's scared. It's not like we're having a conversation about what, we would call stranger danger, or anybody goes home, somebody's going to hurt me. It's no.
Fear-based.
That's right. So it's, really great talk about your private parts, that the private parts are private, that they're usually in our bathing suit or our underpants. We're talking really simple language that kids understand, and they're private. It's okay to touch your private parts, but we do that in private.
In private,
But
yeah.
it's not okay for anybody else to, unless maybe you need help in the bathroom, your mom or somebody is going to help you. Or if you're at a doctor's office, and even then your parent would be there.
Right.
So that they know that, they understand.
And they feel good about it and not scared about it.
Right, and it's okay, it's normal.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
and then you can build on that conversation.
Some hints or tips that I would give to a teacher or parent about healthy sexuality and teaching about those topics would be to start early and to keep it really simple and safe and fun and establish a relationship with the child so that they feel comfortable coming to you to talk about these things. Because if they don't feel comfortable talking about it, it might be something that's quietly kept for a long time and then not addressed until it's a severe situation or something that they feel uncomfortable about.
Start early, make it normal. You know, make it part of the normal life, the normal framework of their education. And then it's a lot easier to keep the conversation going. It's not weird, it's not scary, it's not, ooh, you know, you're coming to talk to me about the birds and the bees, ooh, you know.
My advice to another parent about healthy sexuality education is not to be, if you're offering the education, if they're in a place where they're able to have these conversations with a teacher and in a classroom, if you have books at home available to them that let them read at their own pace about their bodies and the changes they might go through, to let that be, and also not to push it too much, and let them sort of learn it still at their own pace, knowing that it's offered to them, and at home they also can search out more answers if they want.
If I could give one or two hints to parents who haven't had this before, the first hint I would have is don't be afraid of this. Because, you know, because of how some parents were raised and how some families talk about sex and families and who makes up families, some people are really very apprehensive about this, and, you know, what is my child going to learn, and is it going to be, you know, appropriate, is it going to mesh with what I want my child taught? I would say to them, don't be afraid of this, embrace this program, because this is the best of the best. This is talking about things that your children need to know in a way and in an age when it just becomes naturally part of their understanding of themselves.
Then you can build in that conversation about what is a healthy boundary. So now you have the nomenclature down.
The framework is in place.
Right.
That's right. You've had these conversations. They feel comfortable with it. You hopefully do. And books are great, by the way, because both your child and you can focus on that. So if there is a little bit of, you know,
discomfort.
yeah, I mean, even now, talking to my teens, there's times when I feel my heart racing a little more than I want it to, you know, about certain topics. That's natural. So a book can really be helpful to help you have a little...
You don't have to, it's scripted.
Yeah, you don't have to be like looking at them, right. You know, talking. So.
It's scripted, it's already there for you, you know that it's age appropriate, there's going to be some great illustrations, and you don't have to come up with anything yourself. You don't have
to reinvent any wheel that you've never even seen before.
No, that's very helpful. So let's talk about boundaries. Because that's very important, especially in light of a lot of these things happening in the news right now. So talk about that. How do you approach that?
Boundaries, if you don't have bonds and body parts down, is very difficult to talk with a young child about, because they won't.
So you shouldn't skip to the third B, is what you're saying.
We're going to start with boundaries. They all go together, as you can see. Like we've been moving very fluidly through each B. But having a good foundation of body parts, having a good foundation of trust, those bonds, letting them know that you're not going to judge them, you love them no matter what, that makes talking about boundaries a lot easier.
Right.
And so when talking about our bodies, like knowing what's good touch or bad touch is really good and very clean cut in letting them know where a boundary is. When we say our private parts are private, they're in our bathing suits, they can touch their own private parts in a private place, but it's not meant for other people. That is very clear, very succinct way of telling a child without getting scary.
And I think it gives them some power as well.
That's
because,
right.
you know, something like tickling, you know? Don't you remember being tickled until you couldn't breathe and you're saying stop, 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 and no one stops?
Yes.
I mean, that
What
might
are you
seem
learning?
like play to someone, but you don't have any power over yourself in that moment.
And if you learn, Oh, even if I say no,
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if
Something
you
that
say
was
no.
originally pleasurable, it's not pleasurable to you anymore. Maybe you're still laughing. It looks like that to you. People are misreading your cues, and you open your mouth and say stop or no, and they don't.
My mind boggles because then I'm fast forwarding
Right.
to when we're older
That's
in
right.
situations where we should be able to say stop or no. And
But you don't have a
you don't
history
have
or a
that.
foundation of being able to assert yourself and say, no, I don't want this to happen.
Right.
So when you have media, society, your peers all coming on you at once and wanting you to do certain things, how are you going to be expected
Yeah.
to say no?
Do you encourage kids to have a safe list of people that they can go and speak to if they feel like they've been touched inappropriately
Yes.
without feeling judged or
Yeah.
like they were
Definitely.
responsible for it?
Yes.
Backtracking a little bit, like
Yes.
with the tickling example, and then getting to that. What a great thing to be said in a family is, in this family, when somebody says stop, that means stop. No
Exactly.
questions.
So it's just across
And it
the
goes
board.
for everyone.
Understanding
It goes for
Everybody,
other
whether it's your
kids,
aunt, your
parents,
uncle,
yeah.
anybody. If my son or daughter says stop, they mean stop. And you hold that line for them because they're too young to hold it for themselves.
Exactly. Or if you want to pick up a toddler, they can say yes or no.
That's
and
right.
so I love going to my friend's house and being like, can I pick you up? And they'll be like,
Yeah.
no.
See, that's a perfect example
Right.
because
Not right now.
Whoever asks,
Right.
it's like, oh, I'm gonna
Right,
pick you up.
right. And not to be, I'm not trying to say everybody has to be politically correct,
Right.
but,
Yeah.
but you have to understand that kids feel very out of control when their bodies, to them, are being touched in a way that they don't want to. And you want them to have a real clear sense of boundaries, so you don't want to dull those senses.
Right.
So could you ask me the next thing, because I forgot.
And I
wanted
think
to tie it in.
I've forgotten too. Well, let's just go to a book, a resource.
Okay.
So we'll come
All
back
right.
to that if we can remember it in our old age.
Sorry about that. I
No,
got so
that's okay.
excited.
I can't remember either, so
Okay.
I don't think age has anything to
No.
do.
Okay, good. Yes, right. Says the young person in the room. How about a resource, a book for boundaries?
Okay, so the two that I mentioned, My Body Belongs to Me, is a great book. My Body is Private. There's another book, there's several books. I have a favorite author, by the way. Her name is Roby Harris, and she has written tremendous books for this age and older. If you just get books by Roby Harris, you're good as a
You're
parent.
set.
Everything will be covered. And she has one called It's Not the Stork, which again leads into the
great,
fourth B
yeah.
of babies. But there is also a section in there about safe touches and not safe touches. I know what I wanted to say.
Good.
So you've gone through these conversations. You've talked about things like private parts being private, tickling, no means no, all that kind of thing. Then you can have the conversation, if anybody ever did touch you
the
where you
safe
didn't
list.
want to have a touch, especially on your private parts, you let us know. We're here for you. That's not okay. And if they tell you it's a secret, that's not okay either. You tell me, and I will take care of you.
That's perfect. So you warn them up front that someone might
say,
either threaten
yeah.
you or say that it's a
Right.
secret, and that home is a safe place no matter what that
Right.
person says.
Exactly.
And I've had these conversations with kids in school, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And, we have this conversation and everybody's fine with it. Next thing you know, it's lunchtime and they're running around. It's not like a scarring conversation if you do it in a way that's calm and clear and just, you just say it. And then they have those boundaries. And I've seen it work, where they'll come in, John touched me on the playground on my shoulder and I didn't like it and I said no. And they're all excited about that. And I'm
Because
like,
they
yeah,
came to
that's
you,
great.
yeah.
So, it's not just about sexual touch.
Yeah.
It's sexuality. It's the whole thing.
Right.
And it really can be quite
the whole
empowering.
body.
We're
Healthy,
looking at healthy relationships.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse is not part of a healthy relationship.
That's
And
right.
so if you can teach them from a very early age where their boundaries are and who they can talk to about these things if they happen, then we can avoid so much
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
in the future.
Which would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Another book that you like is the Uncle Willie's
Uncle Willie's Tickles.
Yeah.
Yes, A Child's Right to Say No by Marcy Aboff.
That's great. Yeah, very handy. So let's go to babies.
Oh,
That's
yes.
the ultimate sort of cap on the four
the
Bs.
culmination of-
Yes. Let's start with that first question that the child might have, like, is the baby in the tummy?
Right.
But by then they wouldn't be asking that because they would understand what uterus is, correct?
If you use the correct body parts, again, you've done those other
yes.
3 Bs, then they understand, because tummy is a funny one. I think every time I teach this, there's 1 or 2 kids in my class who says, how the food falls on the baby. So you have to say, no, it's a different place, So it's really helpful to use the word uterus or womb, to talk about this special growing place for a baby. And this is a magical time. It's so, in my mind, very miraculous.
I didn't realize that I wanted my children to have better information about healthy sexuality and their bodies until it was really presented to me. I honestly never thought about it. And we got to first grade, and I went to a meeting at the school about the classes that they would be having, and at first I was a little surprised about what they would be learning. It just never crossed my mind. But I learned about how important it is to talk about how they can feel comfortable in their skin.
It starts much earlier. It's friendly, it's safe. Everyone feels really good about it. The kids feel like it's something that they're curious and they want to learn about it, and it's something that is new in a way, but it's something that they've always thought about but never maybe had answers to, and because it's something that a lot of families don't talk about at an early age, the kids, it's one of their first exposures to these ideas in a public forum.
They seem to take sexuality classes, and the information and lessons are getting very much in stride. Because they started early, it doesn't seem at all strange or different to them. It's something that's been part of their schooling all along.
I allowed my daughter to take and participate in the healthy sexuality class because it wasn't really even an option. I mean, I was so thrilled that was a choice that they got to make, because I just believe so strongly in the class and what it teaches children. There's a certain window of opportunity where children understand and need to learn about these things, so it becomes very natural. You got to get them when they're young.
And at that age, what tends to be, what area do they tend to be more interested in? Is it how the babies are conceived or where they're coming from?
Where they're coming from. It's geography.
Yeah.
They just want to know, where is it? Again, is the food falling on it? Right. If you eat ice cream, does the baby have a spoon in your tummy, and then the baby's also eating ice cream? Right. They want to know where it is.
Right. Location.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's just like real estate.
Yeah.
And transportation sometimes.
Yes.
So
very warm, cozy real estate.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So what if a child asks you in church or in a full grocery store or something like that? How do you deal with that?
A question about babies or any of this? And yes, that's happened to me. I say, great question. We'll talk about that later when we have some time. Another thing that's really good to say is, well, what do you know about that? Or what do you think about that? Because sometimes you may think they're asking you the question.
Okay.
When they're really asking something different.
So you're asking them to clarify so you don't jump ahead too
They'll
fast.
be like,
Exactly.
well, Susie's mom swallowed a watermelon seed, and now she's having a baby. We're like, okay.
That's wrong information.
So
let me help you understand this.
Right.
And your training goes into more depth, obviously, where all these bees are concerned, and more anecdotes and more suggestions about how to handle and how to talk to that as well, which is great. And did we talk about books on the babies topic?
Well, one of my favorite books for this particular age group is called It's Not the Stork.
It's Not the Stork.
By Roby Harris, and it's illustrated by Michael Emberley, and it'll give you all the information you need. And some parents have said, we just have this book by the bedside, or we'll read 1 or 2 pages, or my son or my daughter will just look through it at different times. That's a great book. And there's a lot of really good books. There's some good online resources too. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. But
Advocates for Youth is a great site for parents.
Advocates for Youth.org.
Yes. They have all kinds of information. You could spend days on there looking up. They pool resources. Anybody has any good information that's on there.
Yeah.
And then Women's Health Virginia, you could always email Women's Health Virginia.
Yes, wonderful.
And we'd be happy to tell you the books we mentioned here, and and more information too.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that way, if they ask you a question and you say, we'll talk about that when we get home, you can have your little freak out in the bathroom.
Right. You can prepare yourself for the talk.
Go to the computer. Go to a
really exciting time.
It really
website and get the information you need.
It just sounds like such a wonderful opportunity to bond with your child for life.
Absolutely.
Because they'll always come to you, even through those hard years, right?
Exactly.
Or they may not, but they know they could.
They know they could.
Yeah.
And they have their books.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's different, so how.
I know that you said that sometimes children will say, does the hamburger or ice cream fall on the baby? Can you think of any other funny things that children might ask about babies or state about babies?
How does the baby go to the bathroom is a big one.
Yeah. That's a good one.
When it's in the mom's tummy.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah. I had one.
And that obviously is the umbilical cord.
Right.
The umbilical cord takes care of that.
How you get a belly button?
I've had kids ask me, but where is its toys? Where are the baby's toys?
Oh, okay.
And how do you answer that one?
They don't need toys right now. Like, all they're doing is sleeping and growing and kicking and...
The kicking. A lot of kids will tell me, I
kicking.
used to kick my mom really hard. They love to talk about that, So with parents sharing stories, that's a great thing. They love to talk about when they were inside of you.
Yeah.
Or
That's
they had
wonderful.
brothers or sisters, so. Yeah.
So now the children have all the 4 Bs, and how do they respond to this? I mean, how in your experience have you seen it working?
Well, they don't become like automatronic children who are like, this is my body part. You're going to be at the grocery store and they're going to be talking about their private parts and running around, and that's not what happens. I think parents think that, oh my God, if I tell my kids what the actual names are for their private parts, they're just going to like scream it from the hilltops.
There can be some of that initially, but it really dies down pretty quickly. So
That's
and
funny.
you just go, okay, So, but they just seem very normal, very happy, very well adjusted.
I don't think there is a big...
Because it's just part of them now, right?
Yeah.
It's
It's
more
not
of an
like
interior thing, I suppose.
I think it's less than a change, more of a development.
Yeah.
Where they're more, they continue to be safe, happy, and healthy, and feel that way, and know that they're empowered, and so it just propels them into the next level of life where you want to have those skills to your avail.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I like that. It's more of a development.
And it is. It's something that you want them to carry for the rest of their life. We like to tell parents that we teach healthy sexuality. You can call it healthy sexuality education. I like to call it life skills because these are skills you're going to need for your entire life. And so we tell parents, if you're your child's primary educator, you have the correct information, you have this open communication at home, those children are much more likely to delay first-time sexual intercourse than children who don't have that conversation at home, because they are confident in themselves, they know their body, and they know their boundaries.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we wind down? Any other little pieces of advice or a call to arms?
I just want parents, and like I said, I had a very different, I guess, growing up period than a lot of other kids. And for me, I would tell parents, as I tell them in my workshops, like, get over it. Get over it. It's awkward.
For your children's sake,
it's
right?
awkward, but get over it, because you will be so much happier in the long run because you'll have that open dialogue. I have so many parents who come up to me during my parenting classes and they'll just say, my kids don't talk to me. And it's not my kids don't talk to me about sexuality, my kids don't talk to me about alcohol, my kids don't talk to me about bullying. My kids won't talk to me about anything of substance at all. And you create that block. Or I have parents who come up to me who I call the helicopter parents. They're my hoverers. And they don't give their child any breathing room at all. And they still say, my kids don't talk to me. I'm with them all the time.
Because you're always talking.
Exactly. Boundaries are for the child and their friends, as well as the child and their parents. And they need to know, yes, I can talk to my parent about anything, but if your bond, that trust, isn't there, then it's going to detract from the communication. So both ways. You just have to be open. And your child, if you don't think that they're ready to start reading these books at 5 or 6, then use your discretion.
That's right.
Yeah.
I would just say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Totally true. The way I was raised, I love my parents. They did a great job, but there was no one giving them any information when they were younger. It was very difficult for me to wrap my brain around this idea. But now that I have embraced it, and obviously am teaching it, I am a convert and an advocate, and so anybody can do it. And it's really, really important work. As you said, what can come down the pike? This is such preventive work.
Yeah.
There are so many things that young people and us don't have to go through if we learn these basic building blocks and continue to build on them. The world could be such a different place.
Yeah.
As the girls grow up, I want most for them to be able to know how they're feeling in a situation and be able to read, am I comfortable with this? Am I not comfortable with this? Is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? And what do I want to do? How's my body reacting to this situation? And I think that if they can find that inner strength, which I know that they learn in this healthy sexuality education, they can face any situation and be confident in whatever they decide.
There's so many things that I want for my children, but I can cross one of them off the list. I want my girls to grow up with a very healthy sense of self and a sense that they are in control of their own bodies, that they have options, that they have the ability to say no, that they have control over their bodies, that they have a really good, healthy understanding of their bodies. And through this class, they do.
I think, obviously my hope for both of them is that they will grow up respecting their bodies, respecting other people's bodies, feeling confident in their bodies, feeling imperfect is okay, that's how we are, and feeling enough confidence and self-respect to say no and be okay saying no and be able to make good decisions and
Making good decisions is important.
And be able to talk to us.
I have a great anecdote. When my older daughter was about 5, she heard me having a conversation with another child, and the child was talking to me about somebody who was pregnant, and the mommy had the baby in her tummy, and I was kind of on autopilot, and I was shaking my head going, yes, and my 5-year-old tugs me on the shoulder, and she says, Mom, I really think we need to be using anatomically correct jargon when we discuss these things, don't you? And yes, you're exactly right, dear, you're exactly right. I mean, this is a 5-year-old, and it's wonderful. It's just, that was all the validation anybody ever needs, is that, and she does.
That's a perfect place to end. Healthy talks, healthy bodies, healthy people.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Carolyn and Kiana, for sharing your wisdom with us and for all the work that you're doing in the community. I wish you the best of luck with that. And we also want to say thank you to Women's Health Virginia, and also to you, Charlottesville, for supporting Kids Making Television. Thank you for staying tuned. Take care and be safe.
There's a big white ghost in your brain. It's always on time, it's always the same, but after 35 seconds it's the same. It turns over, turns over, turns over, turns over, turns. He's Gotham is the city for the saints. I'll attend the service, grab my cover for the service, but last day she knows that it's the same. And she knows that she knows that she knows that she knows that. But you're crazy, so let you know. Oh, the crazy zone let you know. The crazy so let you know.
What's Going on Seaville was made possible through donations and services provided by Women's Health Virginia, Lighthouse Studio, Hollywood Theater Lab,
There's a big white ghost in your brain. It's always on time, it's always the same, but after 35 seconds it's the same. It turns over, turns over, turns over, turns over, turns. He's Gotham is the city for the saints. I'll attend the service, grab my cover for the service, but last day she knows that it's the same. And she knows that she knows that she knows that she knows that. But you're crazy, so let you know. Rabbit, rabbit, said the lady to the same. Oh, has she grown up? I see that she grown up. But it's the chip that don't save. Smash the pretty penny, but the pretty penny just won't save. But you're crazy, so let you know.